You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 27th of March. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens.
And Out Louders, if you haven't got your tickets yet, best you get them. I had the funniest conversation with my mother, who I made buy tickets, and she was worried because she couldn't get through. Some people, there was a big rush when tickets went on sale last week. Big rush initially. There are still some left, but there was a big rush. And so she was panicking. And she said, darling, now I know what it's like, what you felt like with Taylor Swift, because you're my Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh.
And Jessie and Holly and I were at rehearsals, and I said to them, that's the difference between the upbringing of me and the upbringing of you two. And it explains a lot.
My mother obviously is in another country, but if she was here, she would be entirely baffled. And she definitely would not be in any queues. Don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like you should be saner.
My mum thought it was
with a mum like that.
No, well,
you know what I mean?
Well,
I also feel like you should have given her some complimentary tickets.
Guys, I think it's my confidence. Because, I also love that I made my mother, she
buy
was
tickets.
very privileged and relieved and excited that she had the privilege of buying tickets to come
No
and see.
freebies for your mum. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Mamamia Out Loud Live, presented by Nivea Cellular. The first three shows of 2024 are in Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne, and the tickets are on sale now. There is a link in the show notes to buy them.
Make a night of it. I ran into someone the other day who had bought her tickets, and her and all her girlfriends go and get spicy margaritas before. Oh, so fun. And I said to her, because I don't know if we've publicised this yet, there's an intermission. So you can get a drink at intermission too.
As well.
It's going to be a real night
drink
out.
At intermission.
We definitely will.
Second half's going to be loose.
On the show today, Rebel Wilson, Sacha Baron Cohen, and the crime of being a massive arsehole. Also, would somebody please start a support group for the children of Almond Mums already? And are you overly emotional or are you emotionally dysregulated? Why, everybody is the latter now. But first,
in case you missed it, America has sent a significant message to Israel this week when it abstained from a vote at the United Nations Security Council, which is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, this is something that the US has previously not done. They've previously sided completely with Israel and voted against similar resolutions. The remaining 14 council members did vote in favour of the resolution, which calls for an immediate ceasefire for the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, which ends in 2 weeks, and also demands the release of all hostages who were seized in the Hamas attack on southern Israel on October the 7th. Now, while these kinds of resolutions are technically binding, the reality is that the UN can't force Israel to stop the war. But the reason that it's significant is that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has very angrily reacted in response to Washington's decision not to block the vote, and he's cancelled a trip to Washington. So this is the first big split that we've seen between the US and Israel.
And that is significant because of the funding relationship between the US and Israel, and the bombs that are being dropped are American bombs. So this is an enormous kind of step to go, we just want this war to end. It began with an Instagram post published by Rebel Wilson. Earlier this month, actor Rebel Wilson, who has appeared in Bridesmaids, Pitch Perfect and a bunch of other films, shared a post about her upcoming memoir called Rebel Rising, which is about to be released. Here's what she said.
When I first came to Hollywood, people were like, I have a no asshole policy. Means I don't work with assholes. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that sounds sensible, logical. But then it really sunk in what they were meaning by that, older people in the industry, because I worked with a massive asshole. And now I definitely have a no assholes policy. The chapter on said asshole is chapter 23.
If that makes you curious about who the asshole was/is, welcome to this story. Then this week came a follow-up Instagram story. It read, I wrote about an asshole in my book. Now, said asshole is trying to threaten me. He's hired a crisis PR manager and lawyers. He is trying to stop press coming out about my book. But the book will come out and you will all know the truth. Rebel. At this point, I was like, this woman knows how to promote a book.
Yes, she does.
Pre-order immediately. This was when I commenced my research in earnest into who Rebel's asshole is. And I came up with a few theories. But by then, Rebel had confirmed the identity of the asshole.
She's not good with the long lead time in terms of the clickbaiting her book. She
meant to clickbait
I'm
it.
going to reveal it all. Here it is.
Here it is now. On Monday afternoon, she published a story that said, I will not be bullied or silenced by high-priced lawyers or PR crisis managers. The asshole that I am talking about in one chapter of my book is Sacha Baron Cohen. Sacha Baron Cohen is a British comedian and actor. He got his start as Ali G, but then in 2006, the mockumentary Borat was released. And the shtick, for anyone who doesn't remember, was that it was outrageous. It was vulgar and the character violates social taboos. So, for example, Baron Cohen is Jewish and Borat was notoriously very anti-Semitic. And so he would put other people in very uncomfortable situations. It was very physical, the comedy.
Everybody in the world knows about the mankini that he wore.
Yes,
like the G-string tiny little thing with the pouch, and the whole purpose of that was to put it in people's faces and make them uncomfortable.
Yeah, and there would be jokes in Borat, or maybe it was the second Borat movie, Borat Comes to America, where his daughter gets her period. Like it's all quite shocking humour.
Yeah. So when did he work with Rebel? Well, in 2016, they co-starred in Baron Cohen's spy comedy called Grimsby. If you're like, I have not heard of Grimsby, that's because it was a box office flop. No one watched it. Rebel has spoken publicly about her experience with Baron Cohen on this film a few times. Here's what she told Kyle and Jackie O back in 2014. So that's when the filming had sort of just wrapped up. And she said, every day he's like, just go naked. It will be funny. Remember in Borat when I did that naked scene? It was hilarious. And Wilson said, on the last day, I thought I'd obviously won the argument and he got a body double to do the naked scene. And he was then like, Rebel, can you just stick your finger up my butt? And I went, what do you mean, Sacha? That's not in the script. And he's like, look, I'll just pull down my pants. You just stick your finger up my butt. It'll be a funny bit. During the Me Too movement, Wilson shared a story that had similarities on Twitter. And she wrote, a male star, so this was in 2017, a male star in a position of power asked me to go into a room with him and then asked me repeatedly to stick my finger up his ass. She also noted that the man's friends were laughing and trying to film the incident on their phones. Baron Cohen has since responded to these most recent stories that Rebel Wilson has posted via a rep. The statement reads, while we appreciate the importance of speaking out, these demonstrably false claims are directly contradicted by extensive detailed evidence, including contemporaneous documents, film footage, and eyewitness accounts from those present before, during, and after the production of The Brothers Grimsby. Holly, what do you make of all this?
So it's important to note, I think, that he says that all of that stuff was scripted. So he says the finger in the bum was scripted, all that stuff, because it's now come out that the story that you just recounted is exactly the story that is in the book and exactly the story that has got him so upset, right? The thing that's interesting is that when I first saw this headline on Monday and I read immediately, Star asked Rebel to go naked and put her finger in his bum, your immediate reaction is like, oh my God. And then when you understand the context that this is a scene, this is a comedy, this is the movie, this is Sacha Baron Cohen, you're like, oh, I get it now. But the question is, does that make it okay? And I would argue, and because she obviously says absolutely not, that she's right, absolutely not. I mean, it's interesting how Borat and his whole shtick, how it is seen now, through the lens of now, all of it, the Moors of today, all of it is really uncomfortable. Like even Ali G, the whole point of Ali G, who was absolutely iconic and generation defining in England, was to humiliate people, right? In different ways, and men and women and people in power and people on the street and all those things, but to make them look stupid.
Yeah, so he plays these characters. The characters are really, really stupid, whether it's a rapper or what was Borat, like a reporter.
And then there was
from an
Bruno,
Eastern European company.
who I think was gay.
He was gay.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that he inhabits, it's very much like Chris Lilly. It's Chris Lilly's type of comedy, right? Except what he does is that he takes the character and then the character interacts with real life people, not other actors. it puts those other real life people, you watch their reactions or they get lulled into saying things. I mean, as Borat, there was also another character, a female character, because I think he worked out, I better, have a female character along with me. And in the Borat Comes to America, and she actually was in a hotel room with Rudy Giuliani pretending to be a news reporter and filmmaker and interviewing him. And that got really bad. And he took his pants off and he claimed he was trying to undo his microphone. This is Rudy Giuliani. And that turned into a whole thing. So it's the kind of stuff that I don't feel like you could do anymore.
No way, because
Has
now
not aged.
people would say, the people being embarrassed and humiliated would say that's traumatic. Like you have defamed me, you have entrapped me. Whereas I think at the time we were probably a little bit more lol. The thing about this story is that Rebel seems to be saying that right from the get-go when she was on that set, all the time she was uncomfortable, she hated it, and she said so, right? Whatever you think about that, you have to look at it in the context of Hollywood and the context of actresses having very little power on sets, right? And whether they're Rebel Wilson or whether they are any other young starlet, I guess you could say, until you've got A-lister power, you don't get to say no to the A-lister in power. And so although this instance, in a way, when I realised the actual context, I was kind of like, oh, well, I can see the joke he was trying to get to and how he wanted her to do this physical comedy that he felt comfortable doing and she didn't. I think you can't unpick it from the whole system where basically the women have to do whatever the men want. And she's like, I said I did not want to do it and my career suffered as a result. She also said—
Well, did it suffer as a result though? I don't think it suffered as a result. She's a big star.
She says that the movie was a big flop, which she sees as karmic now, right? And obviously if it had been better— and that had been better, that would have been better for her.
But when she says her career suffered as a result, and again, we haven't read the book, so we're guessing a little bit here, but is she trying to say that because she wouldn't play along, that he blocked her from opportunities in Hollywood? Or is she just saying, I don't understand what she's saying.
I don't think she's saying
I don't know if she's necessarily saying that, but she's saying that when she first started in Hollywood and people said, I don't work with assholes, she was like, okay, big deal. And then she was like, big deal.
And what
Very
she
big deal.
said in her book, what she's written, is the movie bombed, which to me was karma enough. I'm not about cancelling anybody, and that's not my motivation for sharing this story. I'm sharing my story now because the more women talk about things like this, hopefully the less it happens.
So now a movie like that would never have been green lit for all of these reasons. Secondly, if it was, there would be an intimacy coordinator on the set.
Because of so Me Too, yeah.
And so, for people who kind of, Me Too went too far, it changed things for women. It changed things on set. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. It made things better for people who didn't have power on sets.
And it wasn't an awkward dynamic, I suppose, because Sacha Baron Cohen wasn't only starring in this, he was the writer, which meant that if he then wanted to put something in a script on set, then he was the guy that could. So even if she's going, that's not in the script, and he's going, no, do this bit, that would have been very uncomfortable for her, but then he might have felt like that was something he was allowed to do. The other bit of context is that he's saying go naked, blah, blah, blah. Rebel Wilson at that time has also spoken out. I don't know if she links these two things together in the book, but at that moment in time, her body was a joke. Her body was a punchline in every film and in every piece of entertainment she did. And she was in on the joke.
Well, it could be argued, and a lot of people were mad with her that she played a character famously called Fat Amy in Pitch Perfect.
I'm the best singer in Tasmania with teeth.
Love it.
What's your name? Fat Amy.
You call yourself Fat Amy?
Yeah, so twig bitches like you don't do it behind my back.
In a lot of her movies, she was the butt of the joke and her body was the butt of the joke, and people were like, well, she went along with it. If you want to get a job in Hollywood and that is what you are offered as a woman of the size she was at that time, I don't know if we can blame her for taking those roles.
No.
Because she had no power.
I reckon this is a story worth telling. I can see the awkwardness because it's kind of the my truth versus the truth. There's a bit of tension there. But we also give women a lot of heat when they don't name the asshole. So if she had just said, I worked with this asshole, then people would do exactly what I did, which is I then have a list in my head of, I wonder if she's talking about blah or blah, or this person in Picture Perfect, or this person in Bridesmaids. And then we say, well, you've just cast doubt over everyone you've ever worked with. So then we kind of force them to say the name. And then we go, we can't just call someone an asshole. We don't know the exact context of what they did. I was looking into Rebel Wilson, and she has a law degree, and I actually think that that's a really important detail, because I don't reckon Rebel Wilson with her law degree would be writing this book with this detail if it was something that she thought could be unpicked and actually there was evidence, as Sacha Baron Cohen has alleged, that would completely undermine her claim. Because let's remember as well, she's the woman who took an Australian media company to court. So the media pointed out what they saw as a few inconsistencies in her story, but it was picked up by media outlets all over the world to almost paint her as though she was someone who just constantly lied. And
she says that affected her career. That judgment, she won a huge payout, but that was then pretty much overturned or scaled right back.
Yeah. So look, she's savvy. And I think that if she's written this in her book, then I would imagine that she's had her own lawyers and everything look over it.
1,000,000%. Whether she has a law degree or not is not as relevant as the number of Hollywood lawyers who would have to be involved.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting to me is reputational damage. What does this do to Sacha Baron Cohen? Because we've often discussed how reputational damage is different for women and men. Like women, if somebody is whispering that you're not a nice person, not necessarily nice to the people around you, not great to all your employees, if you're a powerful person, any of those people, it will be absolutely career ruining, and often not the case for men. Now, Sacha Baron Cohen's career is in a very different place than it was then anyway, and to be honest, I don't really know what he does anymore, but I'm sure he looks back on those Borat days with a bit of a different lens too. But we've seen recently a few of these kind of this guy who everybody thinks is lovely is really an asshole story. There's another one this week about a podcast bro called Andrew Huberman, and he's the Huberman Lab guy, right? And whether you know about him or not, he's kind of in the cultural zeitgeist as one of those, they call them optimizers, one of those people who's telling you how to live all the time, and he has big muscles, but he's also a neuroscientist and he can tell you how to hack everything, and lots of people live with his protocols. And he's all about therapy as well. And he's very much a self-improvement dude. A very long story was published in New York Magazine this week that kind of unpicks the idea that he's this sort of morally superior guy, because it says that he was cheating on his partner with 5 different women who all discovered about each other in a group chat, that he let people down professionally, that he has a problem with anger. And everybody's going, oh, wow, what a takedown of Huberman. And I'm like, I don't know if that will dent his reputation in the way that it would if he was a woman.
Yeah, I wonder that, because if you're a fan of Baron Cohen, then you would look at this and go, this is part of his art. This is part of his craft. It's how he makes the films he makes. But what does it do to Wilson? It makes her someone you might not want to touch, because what if she comes onto the film set and then she's a whistleblower, or she's disruptive, or she's the type of person who will diss a person that she used to work with or whatever. And that to me is a real shame, because now I'm watching this big smear campaign that's going after Rebel Wilson that I'm sure will get bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's the danger.
Is there one?
Yeah.
We've seen that happen lots of times. If you start whispering that a woman is difficult on set, if she dares to say in an interview that the director made her uncomfortable, that an actor asked her to do or whatever, she's not working anymore. Hollywood is littered.
We can replace
with
you
the
with
corpses
someone
of these women.
Yeah, exactly.
Figuratively. Being a difficult woman is a very specific thing, which we've talked about lots of times. Whereas, as you rightly point out, Jessie, if you're Baron Cohen and your method and you know, you treat people like shit, but it's all in service of your art, then you're a genius.
If I have 2 resumes in Hollywood, and one is an asshole man and one is a difficult woman, I think most will choose the asshole man.
So I was trying to explain to my mom last night that she is the epitome of an almond mom.
Let's talk about almond moms.
Things I can have as a snack in my Almond Mums cabinet.
Hungry? Drink some water. Feeling faint? Have a couple of almonds. Chew them really hard. Swallow them slowly. This is where the term almond mum came from, right? It's been around for a while. Do you know what one is, Mia?
I didn't. I thought it was like a crunchy mum, someone who like was really into health food. It's related to that, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's specific and it came from the Hadids. We were talking about the Hadids last week. Which one of them was it?
We were talking about Bella, but I think this one came from Gigi.
This one came from Gigi.
Gigi and her mother Yolanda.
So, I'm not a Real Housewives person, but Yolanda Hadid is an icon of the housewife world, I understand.
We cancelled her on Cancelled. People care about Yolanda a lot. And she has a few crimes, I'll tell you that.
And she has these two exceptionally good-looking daughters. And a few years ago, she was outed.
I think Gigi dated Leonardo DiCaprio recently.
Oh, one of them's dating Bradley Cooper. I don't know which one that is. Yeah. The other one.
Gigi.
Anyway, whatever. Not
what are
entirely
we talking about?
Relevant. Not relevant. Let me bring you back. So Yolanda Hadid is the original almond mum. This is where it comes from. It comes from a famous clip from a reality show when Gigi is on the phone to Yolanda and she's saying, I don't feel well. And Yolanda's like,
I have a couple of almonds. Chew them really well because your stomach is not.
And then there are a whole lot of other examples, famously stitched together on the internet lots of times, of Yolanda policing Gigi's diet.
I'm so excited for the food. Pretty much all the food that we're eating is like a heart attack in a meal. It's like, but it's gonna be so good.
It's good. You can have one night of being bad, right?
Yeah, I was actually really good this week.
Yeah, and then you got to get back on your diet, though.
Breaking off tiny pieces of birthday cake and going, you're allowed that much.
Oh my God.
So she is the original almond mum, and that
so
was
it's
a
like
couple
a
of years
diet
ago.
Diet culture mum.
Yes, but it's kind of filtered down into a TikTok trend phrase that a lot of women relate to on different levels. So this week, a clip went viral of a woman. She calls herself the Children of Almond Mums support group president when she was sharing, and she's just a very ordinary woman. She was sharing the fact that her mum, as a postpartum present, like a happy baby present, bought her some scales and a little book about measurements and diet.
In case you're wondering what it's like to have an almond mom, I'm 4 months postpartum. My parents visited me this weekend. This is what my mom brought me. A scale and an entire folder of these, charting my progress.
This made me laugh so much. Because she was laughing about it. Like she was so kind of resigned.
Yes, and
she was like, this is what my mum, and I'm like, you've had good therapy.
And the tone of a lot of these people is that. So there's a clip of like this woman pacing around a hospital room and the TikTok is like literally in the ER and my almond mum is pacing around to get her steps up. And almond mums exist on a spectrum, right? You could argue that many Gen Xers had almond mums. I certainly did, who would be a bit like, are you sure you want to eat that? All the way to the Hadids of the world who are like, chew on the almond slowly. We have changed the way that we are told to talk to children about food and diet so much.
Not just to children.
To each other.
And to ourselves.
So are almond mums, is this just a generational difference or is it something much more sinister? Mia?
I don't think it's sinister. I just think it's a throwback. It's like some people who didn't get the memo. I mean, in some ways it's really sad because this is a generation, and it's not just a particular generation, it's a particular person who ingested not much food, but the message that they had to look a certain way. And the problem is we all have ingested that message since we were born, and beauty standards have changed, and now it's having a big bottom, then it was having no bottom. And almond mums tend to be just all about restriction, diets. I remember my mum and my aunts doing a workout called Thin Thighs in 30 days. And I would do it with them, and that was my first thinking about my body in that way. I was probably about 6 in the 70s. You know, they've internalized this restriction, and what's interesting, in some ways it's more honest than everyone going, just love your body, but go and buy Skims or...
I reckon this is sinister. The relationship between daughters and their mothers and how that imprints an understanding of food for the rest of your life.
Oh, I know. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying hate the game, not the player. Like they're victims of diet culture.
Yes, they are. But there are a lot of women who are sitting in therapy, as you say, and doing an internal monologue about food that is in their mother's voice.
See, I never had this because my mum tried to put on weight. You know, I never got this from her, but I still ended up with an eating disorder because I got it from the culture.
My mum was not an almond mum, but she was always on a diet. Like she was endlessly on a diet.
And weird diets.
And she still talks about weight and dieting in a way that when she does it around my daughter, who's 14, my daughter is so shocked. Like so shocked. She cannot believe that anybody talks about fat like that and all that kind of stuff. And my mum does not understand it at all.
Yeah. See, I don't have an almond mum. I have a meat pie mum. She loves. Like I am a person who does not have pretty much a single hang up about food. Like my mum.
Except that you don't like
I don't particularly like it. That's actually fair enough. But when it comes to almost every other woman I know and the relationship that they have inherited from their mother, because I think it's about more than weight. I actually think it's about being small and not taking up a lot of space and not advocating for your needs. So I have a friend whose mother always says to her, they'll be at a family event and she'll always look at her daughter and say, oh, we're not hungry. Like on her behalf, while all the men sit around at the barbecue and eat, we're not hungry. And so what do the women do? Oh, they're fussing with the plates and they're quiet and they're like making sure that all the men are fed and they're making the salads and then picking at it. I broke up with an almond friend. I had an almond friend who
there are definitely almond friends.
She was so annoying that I just went, I cannot.
What did she do?
We would go out to dinner. So the three of us were out to dinner. She would sit down and go, I am so hungry. I'm so hungry. I can't even talk about how hungry I am. She would then fuss over the menu for 15 minutes and then get something, take one bite of it. And it wasn't only her relationship, but then she would look at what you're eating and go, are you going to eat all of that? Are you going to eat all of that? Oh, you must be hungry. Oh, what else have you eaten today? And then she would watch everyone else's and then she would talk about how full she was.
That's poor her.
Poor her. But then I remember there was this one experience. I had a friend who was having a really hard time and I remember we had a box of favourites and I was sitting in the middle of the thing and everyone was just having favourites. And this friend who was having a really hard time, this almond friend turned to her and went, look at all the wrappers in front of you. Like she was genuinely shocked by how many chocolates she'd eaten.
So it turned into shaming even if she didn't mean for it to.
She didn't mean it to. But the thing about almond friends or almond mums is the fixation every minute of every day on food. And it is exhausting and it is so toxic and it makes like living your life really hard.
But we live in, as Mia would say, it's the soup we swim in, right? So, I mean, I often...
the soup we swim in?
Is that what you say?
I don't say it's the soup
we
swim in.
Sounds like something you'd say.
Is it because we're talking about food that I said
I know.
soup?
It's the air we... Well, it's the air we breathe.
The water we swim in.
Yeah.
But my brain, and this is not my mother's fault though, I don't think. I think this is just culture, is so full of useless diet information and all the things that I've learned since I was a human, like a sentient human, about like potatoes and pasta and chocolate, whatever. Like I know lots of women and work with women who say entirely involuntarily they could tell you the calorific content of anything in front of you because they've been conditioned, right? And the thing is not to defend almond mums, of course, but it's sometimes when I've got a 14-year-old daughter who is living in the world and she looks in the mirror and she talks about her body and whatever, and we've all changed the way we talk about our bodies, so I never ever talk about food and diet around my daughter, and I never have. But sometimes I almost have to like put my hands over my mouth to stop myself from saying, maybe don't eat so many fucking lollies.
Maybe go for a walk.
Maybe don't drink that whole thing of soft drink.
And it's not about weight.
And it's not about weight, but it is about the fact that we have learned a lot about nutrition and all of those things. Now I'm just really terrified of passing on any of that toxicity. But we're kidding ourselves if we're supposed to like applaud our children as they're shoveling in hot chips, chocolate, soft drinks. And like, I don't mean to sound like an almond mum, but that's not healthy. And so am I an almond mum if I say maybe lay off the junk food?
Well, what she'll say, because teenage girls are so smart, she'll be like, are you body shaming me?
That's what
Stop
she
body shaming me. They've got our number. I just say, best you don't get scurvy, maybe have an orange occasionally. or something that didn't come out of a packet.
And that's genuinely hard, right? There is something so instinctive about it's really easy with a, 9-month-old because what you put in front of, she throws most of it on the floor. But
you have complete control.
I have complete control. And I don't know how you go from having complete control where everything she eats is like nutritionally, I'm going, what's in this? And has she eaten enough of this? And is this green? And blah, blah, blah. To then, which everyone did. I was 13. I've lived on chips for 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what you do as soon as you get any freedom. But that's a difficult thing.
But Jessie, it can be hard to unpack the difference between what we're indoctrinated in terms of beauty standards that we unwittingly often pass on to our daughters and what is concern for their health.
Well, I guess the question would be if you'd talk to your son in the same way, right?
That's true too, yeah.
Which I absolutely would about the lollies and the chocolate and the soft drink. I absolutely would.
But then isn't it interesting because it's less complicated, I'm thinking it would be less complicated to talk to your son about it because it's not layered with a bunch of...
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. I probably would not be thinking all the time, I can't say that, I can't say that, I can't say that, because I don't want to be an almond mum because I absolutely agree with you, Jessie, that it's toxic and it burrows into you. I can remember so clearly times that my mum has made comments about my body. Those moments are just seared on me and I'm sure she didn't even think about it, right? So you're right. If I was saying to my son, and actually, my son is a very restricted eater because of other reasons, but you're always doing, I don't want to make food a big deal. I don't want to make food a big deal. I don't want to make food a big deal, but eat some fucking vegetables.
It's very hard to have any kind of conversation with your kids, male or female, about food.
There is a very funny strain of this. Sad funny, but funny on TikTok where it's almond children and it's like almond children at a friend's house and they'll be like, you're just allowed to eat whatever you want. You've got Lucky Charms in the cupboard. That's so funny.
Want unlimited Out Loud access? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you to all our current subscribers.
There might be a word for that feeling you have that you can't quite put your finger on. You could be dysregulated. Because people aren't angry anymore, they're dysregulated. They're not having mentee Bs, they're dysregulated. They're not being unreasonable or impatient or distressed or upset or uneasy. They are unable to regulate. Now, often the term dysregulated is attached to a formal diagnosis, like as a symptom of ADHD or bipolar disorder or PTSD, people who are on the autism spectrum or even anxiety. And neurodivergent people are more likely to be emotionally dysregulated because what we're talking about is the inability to regulate your emotions. But now everybody can be dysregulated. There was a story in The Cut this week called So When Did Everyone Get So Dysregulated? It was written by Rachel Sugar. And she talks about how everyone has started to feel terminally uneasy. Maybe their friendship circle is overrun with toxic people or they don't have any work-life boundaries. She says we've been searching for a word to describe this kind of amorphous feeling and we've landed on dysregulated. It might mean that you are experiencing an outsized reaction to something that didn't seem to warrant it, all because you're dysregulated. Happens in relationships. It can impact work performance. And even corporate wellness blogs and workplace thought leaders have advised managers to pay attention to their employees' dysregulation in articles like, is your team struggling? Their dysregulation may impact your performance. Jessie, the author also says that her baby was dysregulating her. So I love that sometimes you can actually point to an external factor. That speaks to the idea that the source of your dysregulation might not be malicious, but are you feeling very dysregulated?
Well, dysregulation comes up a lot in the parenting community.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. Because you'll hear a dysregulated parent can't regulate a child. So you need to be regulated.
How do I get regulated?
I don't know.
This
maybe
is my
enough
number
sleep,
one
Holly.
question.
Maybe if any of us were getting enough sleep, we'd be more regulated. But they're just obsessed with it because it's all about the fact that you need to be able to manage your own emotions so that you then don't kind of overflow or lose your shit over something.
Is it about keeping your shit together? You've got to keep your shit together.
It is, but the other element of this is that dysregulation is sort of believed to be a bit of a physiological phenomenon. So our good friend Andrew Huberman, he's really popularised
Not listening
this
to him
term.
anymore.
No, he sounds a bit dysregulated, but he's talked a lot about this, which is that when things get out of whack, our nervous system responds. For example, today I am so dysregulated. I have not slept. I had an extremely stressful morning. I haven't eaten breakfast, all of those things. My anxiety is probably high. If you looked at my brain and my body and you did all my markers, you would be able to see it in my body because I am dysregulated. Now, there is a word for this that we abandoned when we replaced it with anxiety. That word is stress. I think we are bringing the word stress back into the world, which is stress, bad for body. And what this
stress
is...
in a different dress.
Stress in a different dress.
Does stress cause dysregulation?
I think
Stress
stress is dysregulation. I think they're the same thing. Stress, which has a harmful...
But some people metabolize stress and you wouldn't know that they were stressed. They're stressed, but they're carrying on.
But that's not really what
But,
stress is, though. They're encountering things that might be difficult. But chronic stress, what I think that dysregulation is trying to do is say that mental health doesn't exist in the brain. It's trying to look at a more holistic approach to how we feel, which is actually very true. I actually think there's a lot of credit that we can afford dysregulation, because what I don't agree is that there's any sort of equilibrium that we're ever going to get to, because I don't think you can.
Is this like another balance kind of thing? We've got to be like, what's the opposite of dysregulation? It's regulation.
It's regulation, which is stress management.
What does
right?
that look like?
So it's like if you're someone who can manage your stress, so you're not neurodiverse, you're exercising, you're sleeping, when something stressful happens to you at work, you have something in your reserves, you can handle it. I think that dysregulation, though, is something a lot of us experience and does genuinely cause long-term health issues, which is what they're trying to popularise.
So in that explanation, right, say the same annoying thing happens to you on 2 different days.
Yeah.
So today Jessie found maggots in her bin. Well, I'm sure we'll tell you this story at some other point. But maybe if Jessie had found maggots in her bin on a day when she'd had 9 hours sleep, you know, like she'd woken up in a gentle way.
The baby wasn't crying.
The maggots
she'd had
led
a good
you to
week.
be dysregulated?
No.
I was dysregulated before.
If she had been regulated and found maggots in the bin, she would have been like, maggots in the bin. Big deal. But because she's dysregulated,
I had a mental breakdown.
The maggots in the bin is the end of the world.
Okay, so it is an outsized...
So it's like if you were regulated and you come to work and someone says something annoying to you or someone hasn't done a little job or whatever it is and it sets you off, why does it set you off that day and not the day on another day? Because you were regulated and now you're dysregulated.
And what dysregulation is saying as well is that it's not just about the mind. It's like it's a variety of you haven't slept and you haven't – like it's a variety of basically you're treating your body and yourself like shit, and therefore you kind of get tipped over.
Are low. Your emotional reserves are low.
Are you cynical about dysregulation?
Not at all. In fact, I was a little bit cynical when I'm like, are we giving everything a diagnosis? Every basic human emotion, are we giving a diagnosis? A pathology. You know, we're not stressed anymore. We have anxiety. We're not sad anymore. We have depression. We're not emotional or stressed. We're dysregulated. But maybe it's just an adjective, because interestingly, there's a YouTube video by a woman called Hayley Honeyman who has a podcast called something about busy bee ADHD. I hate the busy bee part, but I actually find some of her videos really interesting. And a few weeks ago, she posted one about emotional dysregulation. And here's a little bit of what she said.
Have you ever had an emotional reaction to something that didn't suit the situation? You know, full crying, anger, screaming, like almost a tantrum-like reaction to something, and you didn't really know why. And afterwards, you were stuck with this crippling sense of guilt and sadness and embarrassment, but you didn't know how to fix it so it didn't happen in the future, and then it happened again. I was told as a child that I was overly emotional. I was way too emotional, and frequently as a kid, I would have large, emotional, intense reactions to situations, and I would be sent to my room. Later in my life as an adult, I'd be told in relationships that I was also overly emotional because I would have big reactions to people doing things, but they would see my emotional reaction as the problem, not their thing. thing. But I think for a lot of people, their immediate reaction or that overly dramatic reaction isn't always just sadness. It could also be anger and frustration. And that anger or frustration or sadness can just feel completely out of your control. And you know what? This might not be your fault. This might be emotional dysregulation.
This is so interesting. I don't like the idea of it's not your fault.
No, I mean, don't either.
Because it's like, well,
Whose
we're
fault is
all
it?
adults and we're not toddlers. But I do liken it to that feeling of anyone who's been around a toddler having a tantrum. It's because they have too many big feelings and the feelings just pop out. Like they just can't contain them within their little body. And this is about what that feels like as an adult.
Yeah.
So the question is, what do you do about it?
Exactly. And what do other people do about it? Because
they have ice baths.
They do. And they get themselves on a protocol and they really lower their dysregulation levels, and you can be scanned for that shit.
Well, psychologists
the point is about that is that what are other people supposed to do about it? Because I watched a bit of that video and I have some experience of emotional dysregulation in people around me. And there was a bit of me. I mean you and one of my children.
Me and one of your children.
And I'm like, well, I get it. And I have to deal with it all the time. But like when she's like, people just told me I was overly emotional. I was like, you were being overly emotional.
Yeah, it's true.
And we're all doing our best.
That innocent person.
And we're all doing our best to try and keep everything calm all the time.
It's true.
But like sometimes you're just going to have to suck it up. But the thing is it's that thing of like, maybe we think everyone should react proportionally and appropriately all the time. And that's much harder for some people than others. There's just no question, right? And as you learn more about way different people's brains work, there's just no question that it's harder for some people to suck it up than others. And sucking it up isn't always good for you either. I dread to think what my scans would look like when my emotions were regulated by Dr. Huberman.
Yeah, I don't mind it as a theory. I think sometimes when you feel out of sorts, it's like, I'm dysregulated and there are some things that I can do that will help. Some are physical, some might be things you say to yourself.
I like this as well because, I do highly relate. I really struggle with emotional regulation a lot of the time. And
Would it help if we yelled at you in the moment you're dysregulated?
Yes, try. Because those big feelings aren't pleasant when they're happening in you. And what they can also cause is huge shame, like massive shame, because you know the impact that they're having on people. You know that it's difficult for the people around you and it's difficult for you, but you actually, it's like being a toddler, like you actually can't control it. Having a name for it, I do actually find is really helpful. And so yesterday I was quite emotionally dysregulated. When things are bad, I have to go for a walk. I have to just walk out of my house and go for a walk and walk and walk and walk. And then I come home and that regulates me. So it's working out what it is. This psychologist quoted in this article recommends breathing, meditating, running your hands under cold water. I thought that was a good one. Sometimes having a shower and also playing with a pet.
I just wonder if this is like, it's just something Holly's always wanted to ask Mia, is that one of the things about always having really big feelings is that for the people around you, they've got to work out when something really is a crisis and when it really isn't a crisis. Do you know what I mean? Like if everything's a crisis because everything's big feelings, you know how you say that afterwards when you almost like a come down and you might feel ashamed, how do you decide, well, that was worth a big reaction because that was, as Honeybee says, that was bullshit behavior that needed to be reacted to. And what was, I was just emotionally dysregulated.
It can be quite hard to unpick because if you've been emotionally unregulated or under stress for a really, really long time, weeks, months, years, decades, then it doesn't take a lot to emotionally dysregulate you.
Right? You've got the low reserves.
Yeah, it is. So it does help to have someone who you trust, who's not dismissive of you, but who says, like Luca's actually fantastic for this. He's like, this isn't a big thing. This is a small thing. And I'll try to argue with him and he'll go, nope, small thing. And because I trust him, it will fast track my regulation.
That's good.
My favourite quote from this entire article was, feeling bad is timeless. The reason I liked that is because it's a reminder that this messiness and these uncomfortable feelings, whether in your body or in your mind, are actually part of the fabric of being human. And there is no established equilibrium where we can come to work every day and be completely regulated. We are all dysregulated people interacting, which is why life is such a mess.
100%. Listen, we don't have a show on Good Friday because it's Good Friday and I will be in the hell of camping, but I'm sure other people will be having a good
I'll be
time.
eating buns and chocolate.
As the only Catholic here, I should be having the day off, but interesting that you two are taking the public holiday, is what I'll say.
Oh, yeah.
I'm claiming that religious holiday, which I do not believe. But anyway, we thought we'd throw you a couple of quick recommendations. And Mia and I have a joint one because we're watching the same thing. Mia told me to watch it. I'm into it. What is it, Mia?
It's called The Regime. It's on Binge. Kate Winslet's in it. So is Hugh Grant. It is nuts.
Really nuts.
Is it good though? Because I watched the trailer and
So
I felt dysregulated.
I didn't watch the trailer.
Definitely dysregulating.
I started watching it thinking that it was going to be like The Diplomat or like that Jodie Foster one.
Fargo? True Detective.
Yeah, True Detective. I thought it was going to be, or like Mayor of Easttown. I thought it was going to be like Kate Winslet playing a political leader of an unnamed despotic country. It is that, but it's nuts.
Happy victory there, madam. Let's get on with it, please, yes?
Ravishing. The flowers are ravishing.
I just need to be brief for these briefings.
Madam Chancellor, Corporal Zubak. Not nice what they're calling you. Butchered. There's a good man in there who deserves love.
The Chancellor has a bit of an infatuation.
He's not dangerous, is he?
So Kate Winslet plays a despotic
Fascist
leader of a unnamed small European country.
Oh, fun.
Now, she is dysregulated, right?
Yes.
When we meet this character, so she's in charge of everything, but she's also
Christmas crackers.
Absolutely. And germ-phobic to the nth degree and living this really, really highly dysregulated life. She has this whole team of obviously servants and handmaidens. She has this child who may or may not be her child. She had someone else have it for her. And there's a whole lot of strange stuff going on. But she is the leader of this regime and she's doing things like dealing with America and whether or not they're going to allow them to keep they've got something that America wants. They've got a mineral-rich environment.
Putin crossed with Imelda Marcos.
Like Viktor Orban, like this kind of stuff. And she's so good. And then she basically, the plot is kind of, she gets this bodyguard who at first she doesn't trust, but then she does. And then he becomes a sinister influence and things just get stranger and stranger all the time. It's dropping weekly, which is strangely satisfying. Like it's frustrating, but then when they drop, this was the same with Fargo and True Detective, is they were dropping week to week and it was frustrating but very satisfying. There's only 4. It's really good, really good. Brent and I started watching it. We're both like obsessed.
Oh, right. I need
Kate
something.
Winslet there's no words. I'm watching it with my kids
so much.
and they keep saying, what's she in again? And I'm like, Titanic. They're like, is she from Titanic? Is she that one?
And the production design, like the clothes, the colours, the palace, that like it's over the top, just amazing.
All right, that's next for me because I'm going to throw in a quick one. It's a little indie, it's a little left of centre, but the Out Louders, they have niche taste. I managed to watch Oppenheimer.
Oh, that little movie.
Film
I've heard of
won
that.
a few Academy Awards.
Is it depressing?
I didn't find it that depressing, but what surprised me was that I bloody loved it. I had heard a lot of mixed reviews and a lot
Even
of
though
women.
it won Best Everything.
But, just because often when it wins an award and it's 3 hours, like 3 and a bit hours long.
Did you watch it in stages?
You have to watch it as a TV series, which is what we did. We watched it over multiple nights.
That's what I do with long movies, especially with the kids. I watch like
thinking.
45 minutes, stop.
It's on Netflix now, so you don't have to pay for it or anything. And I reckon that it's a whole allegory for AI because it's about the
nuclear bomb.
The nuclear bomb and the creation of it. Einstein's in it, but watching how it's got
the real
Josh
Einstein?
Hartnett. Yeah, the real Einstein. It's exactly right. But then it's about how you kind of, once the genie is out of the bottle, whether you can ever put it back and what you do then about.
But did it give you existential anxiety?
No, it didn't. It made me think I would have had it then. Well, I would have had it in the 50s.
I'm a little bit scarred because Well, my hippie mother used to take me to nuclear disarmament rallies and Palm Sunday marches. And we used to have to listen to this woman called Helen Caldecott, who was an anti-nukes activist, talk about what life would be like.
Well, you're on the right side of history.
Like she was a Cold War baby, and then there were some pretty bad things that happened between Russia and America, and things looked a bit dicey for a bit in the 70s and 80s.
It sure did.
And so I honestly thought we were all going to die in a nuclear war.
See, I went to Hiroshima, one of the best museums I've ever been to, but to watch it from the other side, to watch to be a scientist who is going, we're going to create this because we can, and then learning what they have just done with the bomb.
So spoiler alert, it ends with the...
No, it doesn't end there. I just thought it was really, really interesting. I mean, obviously, Cillian Murphy, just brilliant performance. Loved it. Before we go, I finally let Mia be my personal stylist.
Yes.
Mia, people in the Facebook group are asking if you can be their personal stylist.
That's my dream.
Yeah, well, we discuss sort of a bit of a crisis that I'm having, and Mia suggests what clothes Holly and I should go for, really trendy stuff.
I say it as an opportunity more than a crisis. I'm very excited because all of us are in fashion flux.
We are in fashion flux.
We discuss how it came to be that Mia got to spend her Sunday dressing me. We had a catwalk.
You were really regulated.
So great. I got the whole family involved. Luna was kissing the mirror. It was great.
Here's a sneak peek.
What I don't have in my mind is any hard rules about what I won't wear because I'm very porous, except for arms out. I'm very porous when it comes to style, and I'm an absolute slut for a trend. Because I enjoy clothes, I like to play. I don't find clothes in any way personal. Like I'll say to Jessie, you've never looked worse, or Holly, you look disgusting. But it's not
a bit of fun.
It's the clothes' fault.
A link to that episode is in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline. Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman. We've had audio production by Leah Porges, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and want to support us as well, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There is a link in the episode description.